Hello and welcome to the MEE workshop on kitchen bowls and wire whisk. This is part one, and this will focus on the kitchen bowl. And part two, the whisk will follow separately, so it's easier to find the one that you want. The tools you'll need is the slotted tool, which comes in your kit, and something to shape the bowl. So I'm including two beads that will create two bowls of different sizes. Now, you might want to make a 1 inch bowl, which would represent a 12-inch or a very large bowl in your kitchen, but I couldn't include a 1 inch bead in your kit, so I've included two different beads. And if you see me around, ask me for a larger bead, and I'll hand you one. Um, so the quilling paper comes in various widths. You'll need scissors to cut your paper or to tear it. Works well too. You'll need glue that dries clear on the paper. You'll need toothpicks for the glue application, or an old brush works very well as well for applying glue to the inside of the bowl. You'll need a glaze for the outside of the bowl and a brush to apply it. Fine tweezers are helpful, and you'll need, of course, good lighting and magnification may be of help. These are the beads that come with the 1/12 scale kits. Um, the bead on the far right is 3/4 of an inch wide, and that'll create a 9-inch bowl. And the other two are 1/2 inch beads, and they'll create bowls of 6 inches in diameter in a 1/12 scale. I'll include one or the other. They don't really matter because it's the diameter of the bead that controls the diameter of your bowl. These are the beads that I'll include in the 1/4 scale kits. Again, it will make a bowl that's 1 inch and a bowl that's a little bigger as well. This is a shaper tool. It came with some supplies I bought, and it has bowl shapes of various diameters and also shaping for pots. Particularly, we could use these for um, plant pots. But any kind of household item can be used to shape your quilling coil. You need glue that dries clear, and I just used Elmer's school glue. You'll need scissors, perhaps, to cut your paper. And I bought Mod Podge to apply to the outside of the bowl to give it a glaze. This is optional, but it does give a nicer finish to your bowl. The other item included in your kit is the quilling paper. And quilling paper comes in multiple colors and various widths. Um, I've listed several widths here that you can buy on Amazon, but the only one I purchased and used in your kit is the 3mm. And I also bought some 1.5mm paper for the 1/4 scale project. I bought that from a company called paperquilling.ca, and I've included the link there if you wish to purchase it. Unfortunately, it didn't come with the free shipping with Amazon purchases for the 3mm paper. So here's two strips. The one on the left is 1.5mm that I used in the 1/4 scale bowls, and the other one is the 3mm that I used in the regular 1/12 scale bowls. Now you'll notice they're only 50% difference, but this difference is going to determine the width of the base of your bowl, and that's why we have to go smaller with the 1/4 scale. The width of the paper is going to determine the thickness of the base for the whatever object you're making. And the nice thing about quilling paper, it does come in a variety of colors, more varied colors in the 3mm paper than there is in the 1.5mm paper. Here's an example of two coils. The one on the left was made with 3mm red paper, and that's going to be the base of your bowl. It's going to be that wide. The 1.5mm paper is the black, and that's going to be the base of your 1/4 scale bowl. And that's the smallest paper I could find. The length of the paper is typically 39 centimeters for the 3 millimeter wide paper and 55 centimeters for the 1.5 millimeter paper. For the 112 scale bowls, use at least 10 strips of paper. Maybe you want to go up to 12. The more strips of paper you have glued together, the wider the diameter of the coil is going to be. In other words, the diameter of the bowl, not the diameter of the base. For the quarter scale bowls, just 3 or 4 strips is sufficient since the diameter of the bowl is going to be much more in scale with quarter scale is going to be tiny. First, you glue all your paper strips together, end to end, and overlapping the ends only a little bit. It's very difficult, almost impossible to add paper after the fact. So you're best to start with many strips of paper. If you get to the point where you think your coil is long enough and you don't want to wrap that extra strip, you can remove it, but it's not possible really to add another strip when you get to the end of your paper coil. When you glue the strips together, you really have to stop and let the glue dry. So this can take quite a bit of time, is the gluing. And one tip when you're gluing the paper strips together end to end is to tear off the end of the paper strip and join the two ends by overlapping just a little on that torn end. The paper is pretty sturdy, so the joints hold pretty well, but blending in the ends of the paper by tearing off a bit makes a really big difference in the aesthetics of your bowl. The coil is just more smooth and doesn't have obvious join lines. So now what you're going to do is insert one end of your paper strip into the slot of the slotted tool and hold it in place while you turn the slotted tool. I can do this with one hand and hold the coil with the other, but you'll see in a demo that holding with one hand and turning with the other works really well. You're going to turn that slotted tool slowly and the paper will wrap around the tool. Particularly when you start your coil, you want the wrap to be very tight as you can make it, because that will determine the residual size of the hole that's going to be left in the bottom of your bowl. And there will be a tiny hole, but if you coil too loosely at the start, the hole will be larger. So the paper will slowly form a coil around the tool and keep that paper coil as flat as possible. Stop every few turns and make sure the coil is tight and flat. And you're going to continue making your coil until it's the desired diameter of your bowl. When you come to end your coil, tear a small piece off at the end. Keep a really good grip on your coil. Don't let it expand or loosen because you'll have to start over. You're going to carefully apply a small amount of the paper glue to the end of your paper and glue it down. You'll want to hold it in place because you don't want it to pop open. If your coil pops open on you, you're going to have to start all over. So hold the paper in place until it's attached and then put it aside and let it dry thoroughly. When you work on your coil, as you glue the paper strips together, it's really important to let the glue dry at each stage. So this is something you can put down and go work on something else and come back to. So let the glue dry as you work. So now all the glue is dry and you've got your coil the desired diameter of your bowl. Slowly remove the slotted tool. Do this very slowly and carefully and don't let the coil unpop on the inside because you'll have to start over. So if the layers of your paper coil pop out of place, you'll have to start all over again, making your coil again. And this will probably happen the first few times you try this, but eventually you'll get good at it. Once I had removed my coil from my slotted tool, I laid the coil down, the dried glued coil down on my work surface. And I kind of tried to flatten it out a little bit to get it into that nice flat shape using the slotted tool handle as like a rolling pin. Now you're going to shape your bowl, and I'm going to show you a video on how to do that. But you're going to use your fingers to gently, gently, and slowly shape your bowl into the shape you desire. Once you get it close to where you want, you're going to flatten out the bottom and use your bead to get that final round shape. So I've included a video here, and I'm going to show that to you in a minute. Um, Once you've got your bowl to its final shape, apply the paper glue to the inside of the bowl really evenly and let the glue dry. Again, let the glue dry. A small old brush works very well for this. Some people use toothpicks, but I found a brush was more even, and be very careful not to push the paper out of alignment as you apply the coat of glue to the inside of your bowl. Once that glue is dry, you'll find your bowl is very sturdy. Um, Other things you can do to your bowl is add a strip of contrasting color around the edge of the top and apply other decorations such as nail art. Finally, I coated the outside of my bowl with 2 or 3 coats of glossy Mod Podge, letting it dry between each coat. This won't fill in the grooves completely, but it will be less noticeable. Okay, so now I'm going to switch and share my screen again. So this is a video on YouTube, and I urge you to follow the link and watch it all. I'm only going to show you the part about bowls. You'll notice here she's gluing her strips together. I recommend you tear the ends and blend them in a little bit more before you glue them. And now she's putting her paper into her slotted tool and slowly turning it. She's obviously had a lot of experience at this, and she's turning fairly quickly. You're probably going to want to do it slower. But you're going to try to hold your disc and keep it quite flat, and you're going to make your disc as uh, wide a circle as you want your bowl to be. That will determine the diameter of your bowl. So she's finished her coil, and she's gluing it down. Again, she didn't blend in the ends, and I do recommend that as a way to get a better finish on it. She's ended up making several different bowls of different sizes, the same color, and she's obviously making a set. Here she's going to shape the bowl with her fingers, and that's very important, to be slowly and gently. This is the most important part of the shaping, and you don't want to pop it out of the coil or have to start over. Here she's found a nice round shape for her bowl, and she's going to finish this up. Now, you'll notice the hole on her bottom of her bowl is fairly large. That's why it's important to, um, when you start your coil, that you hold it as tight as you possibly can, because when you pull out that slotted tool, you don't want there to be loose coils that are going to make a bigger hole. Here she's shaping it into something a little different, but again, making a round bowl of a different size. And you notice most of the shaping is done with your fingers. The beads only add a final smooth step to it. And when you shape it with your fingers, you want to make sure that the overlap of the coil as you slide it is even. Don't push some coils out of place more than others, and that might take a little bit of practice. Here she's making a slightly different item that's deeper, perhaps more like a flower part than a bowl. So I'm going to end the recording here. So we're back to discussing bowls again. And you'll notice on this black one that I made that I coated the inside with a good layer of the paper glue, and I let that dry thoroughly. Now that will turn your bowl from something that's fairly delicate into something very sturdy. And so that layer of glue is very important, and you need to let it dry carefully. This is another bowl I've made. This is a pink one. And you'll notice that the slotted tool does leave a bit of a tiny hole in the bottom. Of course, you're going to have to cover that up, usually by putting something in your bowl. unless, of course, you're just going to display it and no one's going to stand over it and look inside. Things that you can do to your bowls to make them look prettier. You can put a layer or two of contrasting color around the top, outside of the bowl, before you add the Mod Podge. And that will give you a nice trim to your bowl. And you can also take a small layer of small amount of white air dry clay and gently push it into the bottom of your bowl with a small indentation. And that's going to represent the flour in your bowl for baking. Then you're going to take another small, tiny amount of air dry clay and shape it to the size and shape of the egg yolk in your scale. So you can imagine how small that's going to be, but that's going to be a little yellow disc after you paint it yellow, of course, and let it dry. When the clay is dry, you can add several drops of Mod Podge over top of the yolk, enough to cover the yolk as if it was the egg white. And again, let it dry. Here's an example of my pink bowl. I've added a layer of uh, paper around the edge of the bowl at the top to create a lip or an edge to the bowl.